This is A Geek Leader. Hey guys, John Rada back with episode 96 of A Geek Leader podcast. And today on the show, I've got my friend Jay Karen. And Jay Karen is the CEO of the National Golf Course Owners Association. So if you guys play golf, check it out. We talk about some of the new tech that's coming to golf. We talk about leadership in general, how Jay got to where he's at, and what it's like to kind of having to lead your own team, but also lead a whole industry sometimes and help lead in an industry and be there for folks outside of that. I've known Jay for a long time. We went to college together. We were in the same fraternity. So it was great to be able to talk to one of my friends from a long time ago and catch up and hear some of the things that he's doing right now and how he got there when it comes to leadership and how that plays a big part in his role and what he does at work. I will have to say that the audio, I messed up a little bit at the beginning. So totally my fault, but it's a little crackly at the beginning. I try to clean it up some, but it gets a whole lot better after a few minutes in. So, if you're an audio freak and it bothers you, just bear with it and hang tight. We start off the interview with Jay talking a little bit about what is the National Golf Course Owners Association. So give it up for Jay Karen.
Yeah, sure. It's the NGCOA for short, even though that's a mouthful. So in the golf industry, there's an alphabet soup of associations that represent all facets, from the game to the players to the PGA professionals, the superintendents, the architects, the builders, the club managers, all of that. Our association, we represent the people and the companies that own the golf courses. So I like to think we're the most important association in the golf industry, even though we have among the least resources. Because of who we represent the people that put all the risk to get into the business. They own the land, they own the business, and it's an $84 billion economy in the U.S., and so we are their trade association. We provide educational products and services, from conferences and trade shows to publishing our golf business magazine and our golf business podcast. And we lobby. We do public policy work in Washington and sometimes at the local level on behalf of the golf industry. And sometimes our advocacy work pulls us in very interesting directions. And then we also negotiate kind of discounts and deals for our members on products and services they're buying for their golf course, from your golf cars to software to insurance and food and beverage products and so forth. So it's pretty robust, organization, but a traditional trade association is what we are.
So how did you get into the Golf Course Owners Association? Like, how did that career start? Because I've known you for, since the 90s, back when we were in college together. And how has your career gone from that into where you are now?
Well, so if you go back to 1996, when I graduated from Winthrop, where we both went, we were both Kappa Sigs there. And my first job out of college was at the headquarters of Kappa Sigma fraternity in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I worked for them for a year. So that was my first job out of college and my first job in the bowels of a national organization. It was the headquarters office, and with tens of thousands of members around the country, around the world, and working with a staff at national headquarters and a board of directors. It's a very invigorating environment to be in, and really, really cool with lots of history and all that. So I kind of fell into that out of college, and it was a great gig. My intent after that 1 year tour of duty at Kappa Sig was I moved to Charleston in 1997 to get my master's in history to teach. I was going to be a social studies teacher, public school social studies teacher. And I enrolled in the Master's of Arts in History program at the College of Charleston and the Citadel. It was a joint degree program. And I was only here for really 2 weeks before I figured I needed a part-time job to earn a little money. And a good friend of mine, her name is Carrie Lindrup, she was still at Winthrop. Her mom worked for this organization here in Charleston called the National Golf Course Owners Association. Just happens to be this national association headquartered in Charleston. And she needed an assistant to work 20 hours a week. So I was like, that's great. So I got that job in August of 97. And I had been playing golf, by the way, since I was 10 years old. So it was just a coincidence that I love golf, and there's this golf association headquartered here. And 2 weeks into that job, they offered it to me full time. And so my boss, Ann Lindrup at the time, she was the director of our convention. And so I was helping with the meeting planning at first. Well, lo and behold, I stayed 10 years and kind of rose in the ranks at NGCOA. and absolutely loved it. Loved being at the epicenter of an industry. Ended up marrying the girl who helped me get that job, Carrie Lindrup, as you know.
Yep.
And I was director of membership for the organization for 7 years. And then I left NGCOA in 2007. I was ready to really be a CEO of an organization, and I became the CEO of the trade association that represented the bed and breakfast industry. And we moved up to Philadelphia area for that, and I stayed in the lodging industry for almost 10 years before I came back to NGCOA as the CEO in 2015. So that's kind of a quick and dirty summary is how I got into this. But once I knew that association leadership was going to be my career, I got really invested in being a student of the profession. I got my certification as a CAE, my certified association executive by the time I was 27 or 28. Became a CEO at age 33 because I figured career-wise, if I could be a CEO of an association at 33, and if I didn't mess it up, John, I could do that for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. I kind of equated it to being like a college president. Once you're a college president, if you don't mess it up, you can be a college president for the rest of your career if you so choose.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's a gratifying work. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur in mind and spirit, so I like the aspect of working on the business of the association, bringing in dollars, making the business work, but it's cause related. So you get up every day feeling the pressure and you're feeling the needs and wants of an industry at your doorstep. And so from a leadership perspective, you wake up every day thinking, I got to run the business of the association as a leader, but I also am being looked to do good work for an entire industry or entire collection of membership. And that's really gratifying to know that you're at this one little office, wherever the headquarters is, and you may, if you do good work, you have this cascading effect on an entire industry, and it's good work to get up to every morning. So
let me ask you this: so when it comes to working at an association, you're kind of leading in multiple facets. You're not just leading the people below you like I would think about when I think about a CEO, but you're also having to kind of lead the industry in a specific direction. So you're kind of like leading other CEOs.
Yeah. It's a really good question. That's really a point. And my members happen to be all business owners for the most part. So they're at the top of their pyramids respectively, which is a blessing in many ways when you're trying to influence people outside your industry. When you can say you represent the owners, but when you're looking inward at your organization and trying to lead them, they don't look to me to tell them what they should do. I would never tell an industry, this is what you need to do, which means that you have to you're representing an incredibly diverse audience of people and what they feel needs to happen in the industry, what they want. They all have different motivations in their own businesses. So, yeah, the challenge, and it's a really fun challenge, is figuring out, looking at your membership in your industry, seeing where they are, and being one step ahead of them. And saying, here's where we think we need to go as an industry. But you can't tell them what they should do. Mm-hmm. You can't tell them what they need to do because that's not what they want to hear. But they still want you to be one step ahead of them. If you're 2 steps ahead of them in what you think the industry needs or what to do, then you've lost them. And then you almost have gone into this sea of irrelevance. Like, oh, there goes Jay talking about some new tech thing or some new thing that I can't even figure out what he's talking about. Even though as a leader, you're expected to be a bit of a visionary because everybody's always asking me, what's happening with the golf industry? Where does it need to go? All of that kind of stuff. So you're right. It's an interesting challenge as a CEO of an association. You're leading your members. You're leading your staff at the association. The media want to know what you have to say about your industry. So you have to be able to distill a very complex industry into an elevator pitch and in small bites. One thing I said that one of the best skills I think a solid CEO can have is communication and how to simplify complex issues, but also to understand the complexities of those issues and to be able to deconstruct them and get into the complexities. So that's really one of the most interesting and I think important assets of being a CEO is communicating these things.
Yeah, I think communication is really important. And I think one of the things that gets left behind or forgot about when it comes to communication is that idea of understanding and, like you said, deconstructing things. It's really easy just to talk and to push things out there, but to actually understand the other end of communication, the receiving end. I think that's important. Do you have any tips for deconstructing information?
Wow, I guess you just have to have the curiosity of understanding the layers of something. So it's not really a tip, John, as much as it is, it's almost like something I don't know if you can teach it or what have you, but if you have the intellectual curiosity about the complexities of things, you're going to be a better CEO because nothing is black and white. Everything has complexities and shades of gray. That's why a good politician understands the complexities of issues and understands we don't live in a binary world that is black and white, yes or no, whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to vote yes or no, right? At the end of the day, sometimes you have to make binary decisions. But because I can go into the complexities of some issues, then my members and stakeholders and others say, he gets it. He understands me. He understands why something happens. And to me, that's really, really important. So that intellectual curiosity is the underpinning of understanding and communicating complexities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think it is really hard because a lot of people think that we do live in a binary, that's always wrong. But is it always wrung? You always have to ask that next question.
We had a keynote speaker actually at our convention a couple months ago, and he was a blind championship golfer. He was really great. And he told us about this Chinese, parable or whatever it might be. It was like this story about like a Chinese farmer. Anyway, I'm gonna cut to the chase. Anybody can listen can look it up. Basically, the answer was, if someone asks you, "Hey, is this good?" The answer is always maybe. Because you never know what's going to happen. Nothing is black and white. So you should always live by the words maybe. Like, should I do this? Maybe, maybe not. And think about the complexities behind something before maybe you castigate something, before you paint something as bad for your industry or the savior of your industry or is a disruptor. Look at any association dealing with disruption in their industry. A lot of folks will think, oh my gosh, is this bad? Is Airbnb bad for the hotel industry? A lot of folks will say, yes, it's bad. Well, you got to stop and say, well, maybe. Mm-hmm. Because maybe it'll teach hotels to be better on their game if they're losing guests to the Airbnb phenomenon or whatever it might be. So that, to me, that's the signal of intellectual curiosity is living by that word maybe. When you're examining things.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right. I think a lot of times we think things may be a disaster, but it's really a lesson that we can pull from that may improve the situation in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some of the challenges that you face, as being the association when it comes to like working with other club owners and such?
Well, the biggest issue that I have running this organization and trying to lead the staff, lead the business, and be a representative of the industry and bring fresh things to what we're doing is balancing the time of working on the business and working on the industry's issues. Because in order for the association to work and to have staff here, we've got about 20 full-time staff and we've got a board of directors and all of this. But in order to make it work, you have to have the business. You have to have the income coming in. You have to have a healthy profit and loss statement. You have to operate financially sustainably. And that takes, as a CEO of an association, that takes more time and energy than you want it to. And unless you have a golden goose, kind of revenue stream, which a lot of associations do, they've been lucky enough or good enough over the years to develop revenue streams that put them in a new category, where they basically have the luxury to be able to do really good work and they have solid revenues. When you're not in that category, then you're spending a lot of time working on resource development, and you wish you could spend more time on the pressing issues facing your members. So that is always my perennial challenge, is building capacity to get to the most challenging problems that our members face. And then to your question about what's challenging about working directly with the golf course owners is knowing what's relevant to them. We have 3,500 golf courses in our organization. Some of them join for one reason and others join for another. And some you never hear from, and they're happy to send their dues in, but you don't know, what they're enjoying or what they like or what's important to them. So, a big challenge in all of this is relevancy. and making sure that we're putting out the most relevant things that our members appreciate. And that's not easy because you're having to bet on things. You're having to bet on new programs and deciding, some of your legacy programs, are they outdated? Should you change them? Should you keep them going? Because you have some members that say, oh man, I love this, don't change this. And you have other members that say, that sucks, I'll never do that. So, just try. I mean, it's no different than any business owner, John, that listens to its customers. Some love it, some hate it. And just at the end of the day, placing your bets on what you think are going to advance the mission and committing to those. That's just the biggest perennial challenge of working with our members.
Yeah, so I guess then it's not that much different than being like a B2B company that you have businesses that you have to kind of see what their needs are, evaluate that, and provide what they're lacking.
Yeah, and we have interesting nuances in the nonprofit world to all of that because we're nonprofits, we have tax exemption, and we have to raise money to make things work, and some things are kind of out of bounds as far as nonprofits, but you can still do these things but pay taxes on them. And so you've got to make sure that the work you're doing is relevant to your mission, but you have to make room for fundraising that may not be totally mission driven, but it allows you to bring in revenues. Like I have my brethren organizations in golf. I'll give you two examples, and they're great organizations, the USGA and the PGA of America. Both of them put on respectively enormous championship tournaments, like the PGA of America, the PGA Championship and the Ryder Cup, and that brings in tens of millions of dollars every year because of the popularity and the media contracts and so forth. At the end of the day, the PGA is an association for the PGA professionals around the country, but they bring in $50 some odd million a year or more in these tournaments, but they have to serve their members. At the end of the day, they have to serve those members, and so associations have to examine the work that they're doing. We have amazing ideas for raising revenue, but if they're not mission driven or if they don't seem critical, then the members may say, why are you doing that, Jay? Why are you focused on that when we need you to help with this? Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting. Anyway, I'm digressing. I'm going off the rails here, John.
No, that's fine. No, I think that's really good. It's good to get some insight on things like that I guess you run into cases where some members really want something, or they're pushing for something, or they're interested in something, and other members are more apathetic about it and they don't really care as much. How do you handle situations like that when you have this squeaky wheel, maybe, or this issue where you have 1% or 2% of your base that are really interested in something, and the rest of the base doesn't really care? That's
a really good question. So you don't necessarily listen to the squeaky wheel. Just because they're loud doesn't mean they're saying the right things, right? So yeah. I guess some of this takes time and experience when understanding who in your membership are the progressive owners and operators, and listening to what they have to say and watching what they do. That's what I do. I mean, every market and industry is like a bell curve, right? Remember that from your old math days. It's like, if you look at a bell curve, on the left side, the lower side of the diagram, you're going to have a lot of people who don't do anything well. They're not progressive. They're losing money, no matter whether you're the restaurant business, hotel business, golf business, tech business, you name it. And then you have the fat of the bell curve where most people lie, and that's where they live. And they're doing fine, but they're not probably incredibly progressive. They're just getting by. They're doing the legacy businesses that they've always done, and they're doing okay. And then on the right side of the bell curve, you have the progressive folks, those that are killing it. They're making money. They're doing the new things. That's who I listen to, and that's who I try to serve for the most part. Because if we successfully serve the progressive business owners in our community, the progressive members, if we cover them, then I think we've got everybody else covered, right? Whether they like it or not, we're kind of covering everybody else as far as how we're serving, the things that we're saying, the things that we're doing. If we listen to the fat of the bell curve, then we're missing, and we try to serve them only, then we're missing the progressive folks. Mm-hmm. So that's the way I look at it, is that I listen to and surround myself with the progressive, leaning forward business owners and operators. That's who I put on my advisory council. That's who I put on my committees. That's who we want on our board, and that's who we listen to.
Well, I'd imagine that if you hit that, that 10% that's moving, that's doing things, everybody else is going to be doing that eventually, right? They're going to be following in suit at one point or another, and you need to get ahead of that. If you wait until the vast majority are doing things, then you're behind.
Exactly. And in most associations, like as I said before, need to do their best to stay just one step ahead of their members. So,
yeah, I guess that's really important because you're going to get the questions. You're going to get what do you think about this? And if you're not ahead of it, then you can't provide value.
Right, exactly. They want you to be a thought leader. They want thought leadership coming out of their national association. For the most part, not every association is the same. I mean, this is, some associations may not have that pressure from their industry for some reason, but I would generally expect most association leaders and CEOs, my peers running other organizations, feel that pressure to not be clairvoyant, but essentially be able to distill or synthesize what's going on in their industry and be able to talk about the future, to be able to talk about the present. Here's the conditions we're all living in. Here's our environment. Here's our climate. And let me give you my thoughts as to where I think we're going. I think that's okay, but we have to be careful with crystal balling. I'd really try not doing it, or at least if I do it, I try saying, this is what I think. Maybe not, this doesn't represent the association's viewpoint. This is what I think. And I try separating that. Or I try just offering that disclaimer so that the media and others think, oh, okay, I can take this maybe with a little grain of salt that it's Jay Caron and what he thinks. But I have the advantage of sitting at a 30,000-foot perch and looking at what's going on. And so I've been burned with trying, in the past, making predictions on where things, are going to go or should go. And I've learned not to do that anymore.
No, I agree 100%. There's actually a CIO Synergy conference going on in Charlotte today, and they asked me to be on the predictions panel, and I'm like, no, I'm not predicting. I'm so far removed from futuristic thought. I read a book by Kevin Kelly called Inevitable. And he talked about the future. He talked about how you'll get in your car, but you won't be driving, and whatever you were watching at your house appears in your car, and you stay focused on that screen. I'm like, oh my gosh, who thinks of this stuff? A good segue though. What have you seen that has kind of come about that when it comes to technology that may be disrupting some of the golf industry, or some things that you may see that are changing for the better or for the worse when it comes to technology? How is it affecting golf courses?
Great question. There's only one thing that comes to my mind that I think is hurting the golf industry a bit, and I see a lot on the horizon and happening now that's going to buoy the golf industry. I'd say. I mean, again, this is Jay Caron talking. This isn't my association perspective. But the technology of online aggregation, the online travel sites like Expedia and all those for the lodging and travel industry, we have sites like that in the golf industry. So the online aggregators that the internet has allowed to sprout out, that has allowed millions of golfers to basically go and purchase and shop for golf like it's a commodity, which causes downward price pressure, which means my members, golf course owners and operators, have a real struggle with price, keeping pricing at a level where it needs to be to keep their businesses sustainable. And so it's a piece of technology, the websites, basically the online aggregators that have allowed for this to happen. And their incessant focus on discounting and trying to get golf courses to discount their product through this technology has really changed the marketplace, John. So we're already in a supply and demand difficult climate in the golf industry since the recession, and the online aggregators I think don't help. They continue to provide a pressure of pricing in the downward trajectory. And when you're in a marketplace of supply and demand, we represent supply. And supply wants to, have as strong of a pricing that's as reasonable, and demand wants you to have it as low as possible, right? And so that's the classic tug of war. And the technology helps the demand side more than it does the supply side. So that's one thing that we're dealing with. But on the what I see that's really promising for the golf industry is a lot of listeners probably heard of Topgolf, and that's these dozens of these big great facilities around the country that have people drinking and eating and having a good time, and smacking at a ball, with this technology around it where you can track the ball and play target matches, all this kind of stuff. It's really a lot of fun. That is going to have a marginally positive impact, I think, on the golf industry as far as how many people go to the golf courses and play. But where I'm really bullish is taking that Topgolf effect and bringing it to the golf course and to other areas of the country in the form of simulators, golf simulators. You may have seen some of these, but basically there are these 10, 12-foot wide bays where you hit into a giant screen, and what you're hitting into is you're looking at Pebble Beach, or you're looking at Pinehurst, or you're looking at these great golf destinations of the world right there, in front of you. And the technology is amazing, John. It's like, it is so fun and so cool. And you smack a ball into the screen and you can see where the ball goes. I mean, it's the souped up version of what a lot of kids grew up on, playing Wii golf at home, and those the video game golf. And this is to a whole new level. And there are businesses around America that are embracing this and adding 5, 10, 15 bays to their business. And it's basically a food and beverage, entertainment business. It's golf as entertainment rather than maybe golf as sport, where you go out onto the, to the 150 acres outside and go play. That feels more like an athletic endeavor or a sport. You're outside playing like that. And so this is very promising for our industry, John, as long as the golf course owners and operators kind of embrace it and build it themselves and do it themselves, then they can benefit from the economics of it. If golf course operators don't do it, what you'll see is it'll be popping up around main streets and retail centers, like it has in Columbia, South Carolina, where there's a new place called the Venue on Main, and it's basically a food and beverage business with 5 or 10 of these simulator bays, and they're killing it. They're bringing it in, they're killing it, and it's people playing golf on a screen, virtual reality golf, if you will. This is incredibly popular in Korea. In South Korea, there are like 5,500 locations of these things called golf cafes that are just this. They're simulator cafes where you go, you have drink, you eat, and you play games with your friends in the simulator bays. So it's going to happen in the U.S., and I'm very, very bullish about it. And we're starting to see it. So to me, that's not necessarily going to be the savior of the golf industry. I don't think that's going to cause golf courses to close. I think it's a wonderful complement, and actually it's an antidote to the traditional golf, because it rains.
Yeah.
When it rains, people can't play golf. And the sun goes down. When the sun goes down, unless you're playing night golf with those glow golf balls, you can't play golf at night. So I'm trying, through my bully pulpit, I'm trying to encourage more golf course operators to embrace this and add it to their business, so that American families are going to the golf course to play screen golf or simulator golf in addition to the outside game.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that would be awesome if you go play 18 holes with your friends and you come back and you've had a couple of beers on the course and now you want to grab some food and hit a couple of balls at Pebble Beach. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Also, but another thing about that too, though, John, is, I mean, a lot of families, and one of the things that we hear that people don't play golf anymore is because, I don't have time. Mm-hmm. Well, because you're thinking it's going to take me a half day to play an 18-hole round. Well, you can go to the simulators and play for an hour with your buddies or your family or what have you. And that's another antidote to the problem, one of the problems we're facing in the golf industry. And also, you got kids, I got kids. If your kids said to you, hey, Dad, let's go do this weekend, what are the options in your community to go do something with your kids? Now, you've got younger kids than I do, so when they get into 10, 13, 12, 13 age group, then it's like you're not really going to the children's museum anymore. You're not doing the little kid stuff. So you think, what is there to do? And these days, really, it's either go to the movies or go to the trampoline parks like the Sky Zones or the Velocities out there. That's about it. Imagine if you don't have a Top Golf in your area, imagine if you could go somewhere and go for an hour and play screen golf with your family. And Top Golf during the day is filled with families. At night, it's a bunch of people partying. During the day, it's the families, right? So it unlocks unbelievable revenue potential for our industry if we can embrace it, if we can make the investments.
I agree 100%. I think that's a really good alternative to golf. I don't think it's going to replace golf by any stretch of the imagination, just like treadmills don't replace running outside. But I definitely think it's a complement to it. And
exactly.
I think that's an awesome approach. And going back to what you said about the aggregator sites, I think we're seeing a trend against those. When I'm looking at tech news and things that are going on, Uber's been around for how many years now, and they still have yet to have a profitable quarter. And Lyft they went to go public, so they opened up their books, and throughout the life of Lyft, they've lost over $900 million. So you're looking at these similar type industries where they're trying to, cut the price, go really low, and they're disrupting an industry, yes, but are they going to succeed? I don't think so in the long run.
I know technology is expensive to make happen and to make work. There's no question about it, right? To build a platform and system to support, what is Uber or Lyft. But, I've seen these whole sayings as like, Airbnb is the largest lodging company in the world and they don't even own a hotel, and Uber is the largest automobile company in the world or largest transportation company in the world and they don't own a car. It's like, where the hell are these costs of goods sold? Where are the expenses that are causing them to lose so much money? And you're right, John. At the end of the day, it's like people get what they pay for. And companies like this are going to go out, not that I'm not going to predict Uber's going out of business, but how sustainable can you be if you're losing hundreds of millions a year? At what point does it flip and you start making money? How long can a company survive and lose money? Well, I guess we're finding out right now, aren't we? But I mean, like Expedia is the largest, the largest travel site. They don't own a single, airplane or hotel or whatever. So, yeah, it's an interesting examination. But for us, there's this, I guess, assumption that you need these sites. You have to play with these sites in order to survive. And I'm going to contend that you don't have to. You don't have to. They add some value certainly in certain destinations, but our job as leaders of our industry, if you will, going back to this kind of leadership thing, is to put information in the hands of our members to carefully analyze and examine. Is it worth it for you? Are they doing the things to help grow your business, and how can you measure that? If you can't measure that, then don't do it. Don't feel like you're being held hostage to these sites because 30 of your competitors around the market are also on it, right? So yeah, it's interesting. You look at the hotel industry, and they have book direct campaigns going on because they learned, holy cow, we turned over so much control and power to these companies. Now they're all focused on book direct, just book direct with us. That tells you something right there, that these partnerships with these online companies are not fruitful. Otherwise they wouldn't do this, but they're being held to legacy contracts that they probably feel like they can't get out of.
No, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I definitely see that trend kind of going back, because I know a lot of times when I go to one of those aggregator sites and I find a hotel, I'll go look at that hotel's homepage to see if there's a better deal or if there's something and try to book that way too. Just I don't know. I don't always trust the data that's being captured by a lot of those sites personally.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, there's also something called the billboard effect. I do the same thing. It's like I'll go to an aggregator and see what the prices are and all that, and then I go off, open up a new tab and book directly with the vendor itself sometimes, because as an intermediary, then you become their customer. If you book through Expedia, you book through whatever, and then if you've got a problem, you got to call Expedia. And the hotels, they hate these relationships. So, in fact, you don't even get your points. If you book through Expedia or these third parties, you don't get your points with that vendor, the Marriott points, the Hilton points, and all that kind of stuff, because they want you to book direct. So I try not booking with an intermediary, mostly because I understand the game, I understand the complexities, and I want to support the business. But I also know, as a customer, you're now dealing with the customer care center of a third-party intermediary rather than the vendor itself if you have a problem, and that's no fun.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. So getting back to the leadership stuff that we've been talking about, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome as a leader when you've taken on a new role, such as being a CEO for the first time or a CEO at a different association? What are some of those things that you've struggled with that you've found ways to improve on that can help someone out when they're taking on a new role like that?
Good question. And I think this applies. It's not so much the industry leadership that's the challenge. There's always a learning curve if you're stepping into something that you don't understand the ecosystem and the industry you're in. There's always going to be a learning curve, and you're probably given a year hall pass, to figure it all out. Nobody's going to expect you to be, one step ahead of your members in a brand new industry quite yet. You got time. But what you have control over is your team of people. And in my role as an association exec, it's all about the people, because we're not manufacturing anything. We're not selling technology. We're not necessarily, we're people serving our members in our industry. And so this is my third CEO gig, and I've gotten better at it each time. But essentially, the ability to quickly analyze your team of people and, one, make sure they're in alignment with whatever your strategic plan is, that your organizational chart really needs to mirror your strategic plan. And there should be no gerrymandering there that, we've kept this person for so long, this person should stay even though it doesn't really fit with the plan of the organization. That's step one. But step two is really, how quickly can you understand who's on board and who's not? who's really contributing to the cause, to your mission, to whatever it is, and who's not, and making the hard choices of letting people go that shouldn't be there, and bringing new people on that are on your team. And I'm putting in quotes your team, because they need to believe in what you're doing, and they need to believe in the new direction, the new mission, or whatever changes you're making. So I can't understate the importance of that process, but it doesn't. You can't do it overnight, because you have to evaluate who is really on board and who's not. And just because someone's been there 15 years doesn't mean that they're right for the next 5 years, that they're the right person for the next 5 years. So that's a hard thing to do, John. But I would say the hardest in that process is what Jim Collins would say, moving from good to great. Mm-hmm. How do you identify, or how do you make the hard decisions of possibly letting someone go who's mediocre or good for something great, for someone great? It's very easy to make the decision when someone on staff is a poor performer, or they're disrupting, they're not good for whatever reasons. That's an easier decision, as far as it's never easy in the sense of it's, letting people go is always hard, but it's easier to make that call to say, okay, I need to let this person go if they're not performing. If someone is mediocre or good, but you as a leader, you want great, you're trying to move things forward, the hardest thing is replacing good for great, because people might not understand. They'll say, John was good. Why'd you let John go? Or why'd you make these changes? And how do you say, well, he wasn't good enough, or for what we're doing? And that takes nuance. And that's really, really, I find, the hardest thing to do as a leader stepping into a position.
Yeah, that's not only hard for it's definitely hard for you, because you have to do that to that person or with that person. But a lot of times it's also hard to justify it, because there's a risk there of replacing that person. What's the odds you're going to get someone that's good? What if you get someone bad? And it puts a lot of pressure.
I've lost bets on that. Like, anytime you hire someone, you're gambling. I mean, it's a gamble on both sides. When someone comes on into a new job, leaves their current job to join someone else, that's a gamble on their part, right? And it's a gamble on our part. And that's why the interviewing process, you've probably seen my Facebook tirades about, cover letters and resumes and all of these things, because people they don't sell themselves very well, in that process. But as a boss, or as a CEO, or as a manager, you're gambling when you hire someone new. And so the interview process, the selection process, you need to do your best to mitigate those risks so that you can make the best call that you can make. And I've made some bad calls. I have hired people that within 3 months I had to let them go, that moved for the jobs, things like that it's so hard to get visibility into what they're actually going to do, and what they're going to do, when they wake up every day and come to work. And what the impact they're going to have on the team, positive or negative. You don't know until they're in that position and working, and you can observe them and see what their productivity is during the interview process. They'll only give you the references that'll say good things about them, and they'll do their best to say all the right things during the interview process. You try to get a sense of if they're going to fit into your culture, or if they're going to add to a positive culture. But it's hard to get a sense of their work ethic and their productivity until they're in the job, and sometimes, to your point, you lose the bet, and those are hard times. But you got to have the ability to make changes. As one of my board members said, hire slow, fire fast. Take your time in trying to find the right person. But when they're not, you got to make some quick decisions to make changes.
Yeah, I've actually heard that quote before, and I agree with it 100%. You've got to have the right person on the team. And sometimes that means being deliberate and slow to hire. But once you find out you have the wrong person, you're doing them just as much a disservice as you are yourself to keep them on there. And sometimes it's the best thing for them to move on to somewhere else where they can be successful. And
that's true. It's so true. But it's such an emotionally tied up situation. When you're firing or hiring people, because they're taking it personally. Oh, it's not personal, it's just business. And and the fact is, it is business. But people, their lives are tied up in their jobs for so many reasons. Emotionally they're attached to it. The income that comes from their job allows them to live lives that they want to live, and so it impacts their families. So you got so much emotion tied up into these decisions and these people, which is why most bosses that have some compassion, they take longer than they should. And even I do. We take longer than once someone is not right, nobody pulls the trigger right then and there. It takes time, and I guess I've gotten faster at it. But it's such a hard emotional decision to let people go. But it's the right thing usually for business, But you never know if you made the right call when you fire someone, right? Because they're gone. It's a gamble to do that too, isn't it? So I guess being a leader, you're constantly placing bets. I hate to keep using that metaphor, but you are. You're placing bets on new businesses. You're placing bets on where to go. You're placing bets on what to do with your time, and and there's risk inherent in all of that.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And when it comes to like getting rid of people and the emotions that's tied to it, a lot of people today, and I was listening to someone talk about happiness not too long ago, and one of the things that they were talking about was, 20 years ago, people were identified mostly by their community or, their church involvement or something like that. Whereas today, when you ask someone, well, who are you? They describe themselves first by their job.
This is what I do this is what I do as a person, so you lead with, hey, tell me about yourself. It's interesting because, when someone says, what do you do? And which is a pretty normal chit chat kind of thing when you're meeting someone, they jump to their job. There's no question about it. But if someone said to me, and hopefully this will be true with a lot of folks that you and I know, but it's like if someone said, hey, tell me about yourself. The first thing that comes to my mind is to tell people about my family, about, I'm married to, this and my kids. And this is what, and then this is what I do for a living, so I guess, it's all about your own priorities. And for me, it's family first and then job second.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I've made it a point whenever I go to conferences and events, everybody always says, so what do you do? And instead of starting out with, I'm running an IT department, I say stuff like, I've got 3 kids, 8, 5, and 1. And then I move into the IT, world. You probably mean my job.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's been really good. Any last tips for leaders out there that you want to give before we get off the call?
Wow. What's my if I was hit by a bus after the end of this, what's my best tip for a leader?
Yeah, what are you going to be remembered by?
Wow. I would say that my best tip would be to find ways to say yes. Err on the side of yes than no. Because when you say no to things, then you never know what the impact's going to be. But if you say yes, to our point earlier, sometimes you might lose, but you'll have learned, And yes, leaders and people that say yes more are leaning forward. They're trying things. They're experimenting. And only from that can you learn what works and what doesn't. If you're in the business of saying no too quickly, then you'll never learn. Mm-hmm. You'll never, and then nothing is better as a CEO or a leader than experience. Period. That's the best teacher.
I think that's really good advice, and a lot of people in IT, we like to say no quickly before we've actually explored the reasons behind it. And I think finding ways to say yes is hard to do, but the benefits from that outweigh the effort that goes into it.
Often, most of the times it does. Not all the time, but that's when you learn. And maybe IT professionals have learned so much when things go wrong that they sometimes defend themselves. It's a defense mechanism to say no, because when it goes wrong, it can hurt. Mm-hmm. But if you're a leader, I guess maybe to your audience, if you're in IT, you got to decide: am I a worker or am I a leader? If I'm a leader, then I think you need to figure out how to get to yes.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. How can people connect with you or find out more about the National Golf Course Owners Association and the things that you're doing?
Sure. So, anybody can go to ngcoa.org, but certainly follow me on Twitter, which is J Caron, CAE. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So just you can Google me, find me on social media, and love to connect. I love talking about all kinds of issues in golf and outside of golf. All right. We'll link those up in the show notes as well. I appreciate having you on. Thanks a lot, Jay. It's good talking to you again. You too, John. Hope you guys enjoyed that conversation that we had with Jay Caron from the National Golf Course Owners Association. And if so, please leave me a review in iTunes. Check out Jay's podcast. I'll link that up in the show notes as well. And you can find out more at ageekleader.com/jcaron.